Very nice to be here, first time in Singapore. My name is Tim Westcott. I work at IHS Markit, and if only to prove that advertising isn't dead, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about who we are. So we are a research and intelligence company headquartered in London. We cover all kinds of industries from energy through to defence, macroeconomics, and my part of it, which is technology, media and telecommunications. Within that, we cover a lot of different areas. Displays, we have a major displays team, mostly based here in Asia. We cover all aspects of, a lot of aspects of mobile, smartphones and so on. And the part that I work in, which covers TV, media and content. And I head our channels and programming team, which essentially looks at the business of running channels, both linear channels and non-linear channels, and investments in programming. So what I'm talking about is sport. And we heard a really interesting session today about the changes in the industry. So there's a kind of linear structure to this brief presentation. We're going to go from, as Netflix sees it, so this is an interesting document to read, the Netflix long-term view, because it really sets out a major online player's vision about where we're going. The way that they see it, there was an era of radio, which was succeeded by the era of linear TV, free TV and pay TV. And we're now in an era of internet television. And the major characteristics of that are that consumers are no longer bound by the schedule. They're able to choose what they want to watch when they want to watch. So what does this mean for sport? Well, we think there's a lot of interesting developments going to happen, that 2018 is going to be a big year for online sport as well, as you'll see in this presentation. However, the earliest era of TV, which is sport on free TV, is still very much with us. Even in this age of fragmentation, as you can see, there are still massive audiences being aggregated for major sports events. So just to pick three examples, the last World Cup final, or the 2014 World Cup final, was watched by 570 million people around the world. Super Bowl in America is still a major event. Most of that viewing is on free television. And the audiences, at least until this year, when the audiences fell slightly, have just kept going up. The Olympic Games, also particularly the Summer Olympic Games every 4 years, is still an event where a massive amount of the viewing is live. So sport, free-to-air sport is still a really important part of the armory for schedulers and linear broadcasters. Because even though people have choice of literally thousands of different channels, you will get large numbers of people watching events. And it's also mostly live. About 90% of sports viewing is live. So people will time shift drama, entertainment, comedy, kids shows much more than they do sport. They don't want to miss a result. BBC, which is obviously license fee funded, a free-to-air broadcaster, is planning a major push into sports broadcasting. It's going to show what it claims to be an unprecedented number of hours of live sports events this year. So free TV is certainly not dead. It's still very much with us. There's more sport being televised. There's more being broadcast from sports events and being made available for different platforms. There's also, if you look at the history over the last sort of 25 years or so of the Olympic Games, there's more countries receiving it. So about 200 countries license the Olympic Games. And that content in Rio, according to the IOC, was broadcast on 574 TV channels around the world, plus 270 dedicated digital platforms. And a lot of that viewing, obviously some of that viewing was free to view, but some of it was free. And even if you look at licensing, obviously much of the inflation of sports rights, which we read about, has been driven by pay TV. But if you look at the three major quadrennial events, the rights owners have also managed to secure increases in their license fees by keeping these events mainly, not exclusively, but mainly on free TV. So if you look at the last three licensing cycles of the Olympics, the Summer Olympics, the World Cup, and the UEFA, the Euro finals between European national football teams, those rights holders have managed to increase their license fees because, again, these events aggregate large audiences. Okay, but the big explosion in rights has come from pay TV. This development started with pay-per-view boxing events, which were shown on closed-circuit networks in the 60s. When HBO launched in the States in the 70s, it was with actually a live ice hockey game. And then ESPN, the big sports network, was founded in 1978 at the end of the decade. Pay TV spread to Europe in 1984 with the launch of Canal+, the French pay TV network, and that was very much predicated on films and football, driving the subscriber value of that platform, which was hugely successful. And then Sky in the UK launched the Premier League in 1992, and was very much its subsequent success has very much been down to showing the Premier League. So why does sport work on pay TV? Well, partly it's the specialist content focus. So pay TV channels are allowed to specialize in a particular program type, particular audience. Obviously sport, let's not forget there are lots of people who can't stand sport, but people who do like sport like to have channels which are just dedicated to their events. And also, obviously, there's more airtime. Sport has always been difficult to squeeze into a general schedule, so if a match runs over, or if you've got a 5-day cricket test match, it was continually being interrupted on free TV, so pay was a natural home for sport. Pay TV has also made lots of innovations with things like replays, high definition, and so on. And Sky recently said that the KPI for pay TV programming is something that subscribers want to pay for, and certainly for people like Sky, that has very much been live sport, live and exclusive sport. And just to look again at the Premier League, in the old days of free television, there wasn't a great deal of sport available on television. So free-to-air broadcasters were very sparing in the amount of rights that they actually showed. So there's been a big increase in the amount of content being televised, and the Premier League is just one example. So the number of matches actually televised live in the UK, because all matches are televised live outside the UK, has gone up from, there are 380 matches played in a season, so it's gone up from a very small number to more like well over half of the matches that are actually played. So pay TV has been very hungry for content, and people have been prepared to pay for it. Just a very quick look at the US. The major sport in the US has been NFL. Even though most major US sports are still licensed at least partly to free TV, so if you're in your local town or city, you'll see your local team on free TV. But first of all, ESPN and then DirecTV and subsequently telcos getting into the business have all driven up the amount of money that's being put into acquiring US sports rights. Similar situation in Europe with football leagues. I was mentioning Sky. Last time the contract for the Premier League was renewed, Sky's payment went up by 85% a year because of competition from BT. Also, the Bundesliga in the license period, which actually comes out after this table, Sky in Germany paid 85% more money for Premier League. So, as we all know, sports has been vital to the success of pay TV, and pay TV operators have paid more and more money in order to license the rights to exclusive events. So that's the situation we're in with pay TV. However, broadband has been growing fast in the era of internet TV. And in North America and Western Europe, there are now more homes which have high-speed broadband than pay TV. So pay TV is not at saturation point, but broadband has very quickly has overtaken pay TV to be at saturation point. So this means that people have other content choices besides pay TV, and this has put a lot of pressure that we're all familiar with, particularly in the US, with cord cutting. So the number of people with pay TV subscriptions is declining year on year. In Europe as a whole, there isn't the same cord-cutting situation, but if you look at some operators like Canal+, there's certainly an impact of cord-cutting. They are losing subscribers. In Asia and some Asian markets, the same is happening, even though overall pay TV is continuing to grow. So we're at a point where pay TV is kind of either maturing or not growing. So the rights, the companies that are buying the rights know that they can't afford to keep paying 85% increases in rights, and more consumers are unwilling to pay the amount of money they're being asked for sports bundles and looking for other entertainment choices. Just looking at the cost of getting access to pay TV sports in Europe, if you want to get all major leagues, all the key sports, you normally have to subscribe to more than one operator. And in France, that means you're spending something like 85 euros a month just to have, with the cost of basic packages plus the sports packages factored in. So naturally, pay TV, premium pay TV is an expensive thing to do, whereas people are looking for cheaper entertainment choices. So we are now in the era of internet TV, and it has been a long time coming. The first media players offering video were launched, back in the 1990s. The first streams of live events were done, as long ago as 2000 and 2001. I think the first MLB match and the first NBA match were streamed in that year. So it's been around for a long time, but it's taken a very long time to take off, if indeed it is taking off. There have been technical challenges which I won't go into. Obviously, the broadband infrastructure has not been up to the high demands of bandwidth that you need to operate live video. People are intolerant, for obvious reasons, of the service crashing and going down. And there's still a big difference in the time lag between an online stream and a live broadcast stream. So the internet wasn't really designed for broadcasting live video content, and that's one reason why it has not developed as quickly as it might have done. Because linear TV is basically more cost effective. You reach more people, a greater number of people. Also, I think rights owners were very concerned about the risks. They didn't want to risk cannibalizing their lucrative pay TV revenue streams by putting too much content online. There have been exceptions, so there have been some sports rights holders like the MLB in the US who've been very aggressive and very interested in developing this area, as we'll see. And just to look at ESPN, some of these figures are forecast, obviously, but every year the number of people subscribing to ESPN in the US has declined. So we were talking about cord cutting. You can see a very real existence of fewer people having pay TV subscriptions in that. So rights owners are looking to go online for a number of reasons, but a key reason is just in order to reach consumers directly. Pay TV channels have relationships with pay TV providers. ESPN is the most expensive channel in the US, so the relationship they have with the pay TV platforms who deliver them subscribers are incredibly important, and for years they haven't wanted to jeopardize that by going direct to the consumer. But they're now seeing that for a number of reasons, the time is right for them to do that. One is obviously the improvement of broadband infrastructure and broadband connectivity. Also, more people have internet-connected devices. The number of internet-connected devices worldwide has increased to something like 10 billion, so a large number of those are smartphones. A lot of them are also tablets, laptops, consoles. And consumers have really embraced this habit of watching content on devices other than the TV set in the living room. The other key reason that, the elephant in the room, if you like, is that actually there's a lot of piracy of sport, and it's, as anyone who has teenage children will know, it's comparatively easy to get your hands on a live stream of sport. So there's a reason that there's obviously a consumer demand which rights holders need to address by putting their own content available, possibly with better service quality, rather than to sort of discourage piracy. It also means that they're more able to exploit the full range of their rights, and that's a key reason why people like the MLB have put their content online, because they're not able to transmit all of their matches live, so they're putting a lot of them online. And also, the internet's very suitable for niche audiences, so you might not necessarily be wanting to reach 570 million people with your sports event, but there might be people who are unprovided by linear TV channels, because even a niche pay TV channel is basically in the business of aggregating an audience of a certain size. So the economics of online platforms can be much better for niche sports. I'm just going to very quickly, because my time is running out, go through a few examples of sports which are targeting online and why they're doing it, and also operators. So they fall into lots of different categories, and there's no one approach that people are adopting to put their sports online. If you look at major sports rights holders, and these include the major US leagues, They also include European football leagues and also increasingly BCCI in India, Indian cricket. They don't have a problem selling their rights. There are plenty of people who will apply for rights when they're advertised. They're able to break their rights up into packages. They're able to get competing bids, and that all adds to price inflation. So why would they go online? Well, partly because their consumers, as we've seen, are no longer necessarily in front of the TV set, so they want to reach their consumers away from the TV. There may be people who've cut the cord or don't have the cord who nevertheless are interested in sport. They're not necessarily interested in an expensive aggregated sports channel, but they might be interested in a subscription to a particular event or a particular league. And this means they can also exploit rights to those less mainstream games. You know, the less popular baseball teams, they might have fans in other parts of the US and their matches aren't televised. It also leads a lot more to more engagement, particularly on social media. So there's a possibility of reaching different audiences, but also giving them lots of content around their favourite sports if they're passionate about them, including statistics. Obviously, there are risks, and the key risk here is jeopardizing those lucrative arrangements and agreements that they have with pay TV partners. So can online actually replace the revenue streams from pay TV? It seems very unlikely because most of the most over-the-top ARPUs are considerably lower than pay TV ARPUs. So there's a big risk of jeopardizing those revenue streams if you're putting too much of your content available online. You might also lose contact with casual fans, particularly if your events aren't on free TV. So if all of your events are behind a paywall and you have to have an app to subscribe to a particular league, you're not going to reach those people who might be occasional fans of sports, you know, particularly if a national team is in the finals of a competition or a club team is doing particularly well. So a key sort of mission for all sports is to grow their base of fans. And if you specialize too much, it's not easy to do that. Pay TV operators, the likes of Astro here in Asia and Malaysia, Sky in the UK, Dish Network, etc. in the US, they also don't want to jeopardize their subscriber bases. These subscribers are paying quite a lot of money for their pay TV bundles. They do not want to replace an €85 a month pay TV package with a €10 a month pay TV package. But again, they have to be careful to be reaching people who just aren't in the market for a pay TV subscription. They also want to reach people when they're not in front of devices. So all pay TV companies are obviously developing TV Everywhere offers, but they're also increasingly going standalone as well. So there is a more flexible alternative to signing up for a year. This is what consumers want. Obviously, the risks, again, cannibalizing their core subscriber bases and the fact that people who are in the market for an online subscription sometimes won't pay as much as they would for an aggregated pay TV package. What I've called here less major sports, these are the ones that maybe are able to do TV deals, sometimes pay TV deals, but not necessarily for all of their rights. Sometimes they can't do pay TV deals because they're kind of at the back of the line. They can't monetize all of their events and all of their rights in the way that the big sports can do. Sometimes they haven't even been able to televise all of their matches. The EFL, which is the four sort of junior English professional football leagues, is a good example. Their international package of matches used to be fairly restrictive. Now they've launched a service called iFollow, which means that fans around the world can actually get a direct subscription. So it's probably not a large number of people who follow, you know, Bristol Rovers or Ipswich Town in other parts of the world, but now they have the opportunity to see their matches. So there's a lot of interest in this area from what you might call more niche sports. And even the major US sports outside the US are not necessarily major sports. So the direct-to-consumer route makes a lot of sense for them in the international market, which is why the likes of the NBA have been very aggressive in launching their NBA pass outside the US. Then we have a new breed of pure OTT players. We saw a really interesting session this morning about some of the Asian OTT players. There are lots of businesses now cropping up which are available exclusively online, or in some cases partly online, partly linear. DAZN, the UK-backed company, is one example. So they've launched services in Japan and other markets where they are only available online, and they're now in the market for major events. They have a lot of non-exclusive rights, but they are, again, exploiting this new base of consumers who are online, who are interested in subscribing to sports, and who don't necessarily feel they're being catered for by linear TV. So why are they going online? The same reasons as everybody else, because the number of people who can subscribe to events is growing. They're also interested in more flexibility. They might not want to subscribe to a package for a year. They might just want to watch it for a month or something. Again, the same risks as we heard before. You know, if you're recruiting low ARPU customers, how are you going to enter the market for the more expensive sports rights? And if you don't have attractive sports rights, how are you going to build your subscriber base? Also, what the risks of being another app. You know, if you have, there are now many dozens, hundreds of sports apps offering live streaming available on your Android and Apple stores. So how are you going to make yourself stand out in that sort of environment? Having said all that, we do think that 2018 will be a pivotal year for online sport, and that's because there are a number of events which are predictable, which have already been announced, which are going to happen. So ESPN, the major US linear TV channel, is launching its direct-to-home service in the US. This is happening in the spring of 2018. And interestingly, that's going to include streaming access to ESPN's channels, but it's also going to include thousands of hours of events which are perhaps less mainstream for a US audience, but for which nevertheless there exists an audience in ESPN's view that will be prepared to pay for them. So that's really one of the giants of pay TV sport, which is going into this area of delivering its content direct to the consumer. And they very much see that as the future of the industry. Clearly, they also have to weigh the risks of jeopardizing their revenue stream from their linear channels. Formula One is launching a direct-to-consumer service as well next season, and that season starts with the Melbourne Grand Prix in March. They are going to keep some of their TV deals in place, but in other markets where they've either had trouble getting a TV deal they want, or they feel as a fan base that isn't being reached through pay TV, they will offer this direct-to-consumer streaming opportunity. And then there's a lot more football rights auctions coming up, particularly the Premier League in the UK in the first part of the year. So we'll see there if the if the new wave of rights owners or rights buyers like Amazon are going to enter the field and actually acquire rights to some of those events. And I should say more about this perhaps than a final slide, but let's not forget social media. Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, Yahoo, YouTube have all been very interested in sport, and they've actually become increasingly active in acquiring streaming rights to sport. YouTube acquired the rights to the IPL, the first two seasons of the IPL, back in 2010. And a lot of these platforms are actually advertising supported. So they are not looking to put these events behind a paywall. They are looking to reach an audience which is available to watch content free, and they're looking to develop advertising revenue from these streams. And for someone like Facebook, which has so much engagement with fans, perhaps a lot of conversation about sports events, it's a shared enthusiasm, a shared passion. If you like, actually putting the live streaming coverage of a sports event around all the conversation and chatter is a natural next step. So these platforms are going to be very crucial to the future of online sport, but we'll have to see how much, on what terms they're going to buy rights. Facebook did make a bid for the rights to the IPL, but it was actually outbid by basically a traditional linear TV player. And let's not forget Amazon. Amazon is looking to acquire pay rights. It's launched its Amazon Channels package, and it's a very major electronic retailer. So that concludes my presentation within the time. So thank you very much for listening.